Welcome to the Man Up God's Way podcast, a show that dives into the real, raw, and relevant issues for men in their faith, life, and community. Now, your host, Jody Burkeen.
Here with the Man Up God's Way podcast. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you take an opportunity to subscribe to our page. We're on YouTube as well as all podcast platforms, Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We would love for you to follow us there. Today I've got a very special guest. I'm really excited about David Peterka. David, I'm glad you're here again, brother. How you doing?
Excellent. So happy to be here.
Well, good, brother. I'm so happy that you joined us. You are in the United States right now from Africa, doing a whirlwind tour, if you will, just trying to reach out to your donors and the people that help support your mission. Why don't you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, we are missionaries, my wife and I, with our two kids, 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we spend the majority of every year in Malawi in Southeast Africa. We do come back to the U.S. actually every year. It's a little bit of a unique schedule compared to a lot of missionaries that will be on the field, for 3 or 4 years at a time. But yeah, we're here for about 2 months, and we run a ministry called When the Saints, WHEN, like When the Saints Go Marching In.
Right.
And we have the first and only long-term trauma counseling safe home in the whole country of Malawi in Southeast Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. And we also not only, help girls out of abusive situations, have a maximum capacity right now of 98 in this first campus, but we also do ministry with men, discipleship with men, and we want to see a sustainable reduction in cases of abuse. And yeah, just pulling girls out of abusive situations is kind of like hacking at the branches of an injustice, only to see the roots regrow branches, and having traffickers and the demand side of an injustice still there. The same number of men wanting to abuse the same number of girls. And so the only, we came to find out with the leading of the Holy Spirit that the only truly sustainable way to see a reduction in abuse is to see the hearts of men be changed, transformed by the gospel. And so we have, now 22 weekly groups, about right under 500 men that come together every week to study, the scriptures. And learn how to walk in sexual integrity, honor women and girls in their community, treat them with dignity. Yeah, just honor the Lord through their interactions. So yeah, that's kind of primarily what we do.
Praise God. It's when I think of that, it's always the same message that we give, even here in the States for those who are addicted to pornography. And, I've dealt with sex trafficking ministries that actually go into third world countries and stop sex trafficking rings. And, they arrest the ring leader, so to speak. And then they also arrest a lot of times middle-aged, rich American men that have gone into these places. And, it's always the same answer to the question of how did you end up here? When they arrest these guys, and it started with pornography. It started with this visual, this mindset that I'm not getting what I need from my wife, but I will get it from pornography, and then from pornography you kind of get immune to that and desensitized to where you're getting a prostitute, and then the prostitute's not enough, and the next thing you know, you're in a third world country, trying to buy a 13-year-old or 10-year-old girl, and that's the answer that they've always given. And so, I love what you're saying about it's the heart of an issue. That if you don't stop the heart, the sickness of the heart, which we know is sin. You're not going to stop the sex trafficking, no matter how many girls that you get inside in your walls, so to speak. So, and that's a beautiful thing to hear, that you're actually going after. It's the problem. It's broken men who have a sinful heart that are the problem, and if you can wipe that out, then you've got a problem fixed. So, wow, man, that's very powerful. Now, how long have you been doing that?
The ministry started in 2011. We just had our 15th annual fundraising banquet.
Wow.
In April. Yeah.
So the training of the men or the protecting of the women?
Yeah, the whole ministry, we've been running for 15 years. The men's ministry launched in 2018.
Okay.
So a number of years later.
Right.
After, we first started actually with evangelism. We kind of have this triangular model. We started with just by proclaiming the gospel. We believe that, you can go into any culture, any country, any city in the world, and the best thing you can do to see kind of two things simultaneously happen. One, an eradication of negative things in that culture, but also an exemplification of beautiful things in that culture, Like humanity was created in the image of God, and whether they know him or not, or know that or not, they're reflecting him, in certain aspects. And so when the gospel is proclaimed and people give their lives to Jesus, those two things happen,
Right.
And so, we just started showing the Passion of the Christ film, actually, and just preaching the gospel and, just going village by village. We actually counted up over the last year. We shared the gospel with 7,800 people.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, we'll do about 2 a month. We'll see 400 or 500 people, 600 people sometimes come to these evangelism activities.
Holy cow! Cow.
It kind of moved from that through 2011. We just kind of fundraised. It took a while to construct.
Right.
This first long-term trauma counseling safe home in Malawi, but we wanted to be doing ministry while we were working toward that. And then, once that got established after about 3 years, the police came to us and asked us to help them raid a brothel in our community in Ponela.
Wow.
It's about an hour north of the capital city, Lilongwe, of Malawi. And we sent a couple of our staff members with a team of police, showed up at this brothel that they had identified. Girls just started scattering. They thought they were going to get arrested and they were in trouble. But the police were actually able to essentially kind of grab 8 girls and free 8 girls that came right into our safe home.
Wow.
And the trafficker was actually a woman. She would go into villages, tell families, hey, I can get your daughter a job. So if they're moving from a village of 300-400 people, our city isn't huge. It's about 35,000-40,000 people. But to a lot of families in a village, that's a big step up. And man, my daughter can go get a job. Usually the lady would just say she can work as a nanny in a house or something. But then in the process, she would start grooming them and say, actually, that's not what you're going to be doing. And get them into prostitution. A police officer had actually trafficked 3 girls into a bar about 15 minutes away that he was running.
Right.
13, 14, 15-year-old girls. And the community started reporting this guy in this bar. It's like, we've been seeing these really young girls here. And that's how these 3 girls came into our safe home. It was this wild story. They were sleeping in the hallway of the police station. And then they said, well, maybe when the Saints can take them. And so while they were with us, one of the girls opened up to one of the counselors. They were just with us for about 2 weeks while they just wanted a short-term, kind of transit facility while they tried to identify and speak with the family and let them know what had actually happened to their daughters, so they would be able to be returned home. Yeah, one of the girls opened up and says, man, I'll show you where the brothel is. So that's how this brothel was identified, and we partnered with the police to raid it.
Wow.
The discouraging part of it was after all the charges were brought on the trafficker, the woman that was running this brothel, she had, forced abortions on girls and all these counts of trafficking. She was actually supposed to get 16 years in prison. She was out of prison after 6 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And you never know, if there's some kind of bribery going on or what exactly happens. And so that's when, in 2018, we just realized this woman could go back to, the success essentially of raiding this brothel, bringing all these girls out, and putting them in the safe home. It has just created this void. And this woman can go and just say, well, we don't know exactly if she did, but I can just start a brothel up again. And I have all these connections. And let me go now fill the void. Let me go traffic all these other girls that wouldn't have otherwise been abused if it wasn't for our ministry of bringing these girls out to create these empty positions. And so that's just grieved us. We just thought there's got to be a more sustainable solution to this injustice,
Wow. Holy cow. So just Now, did you go to Africa thinking that's what you were going to do, or is this just kind of the way that God worked? Because I know you started off evangelizing, just sharing the gospel message. Did this just kind of, God just say, all right, keep evangelizing, but here's your sustainable ministry? Is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, we launched the ministry in 2011, but if you go back 2 years, January of 2009, the church I was attending did a 3-week series on the topic of fasting. And after the first week, 2 of my friends, they come up to me and they say, we want to try to fast for 21 days while we are learning about the topic. We don't want to just intellectually learn about it. We want to put it into practice. And I had fasted for 3 days once, before.
Right, exactly.
I thought I was going to wither away and die. And I thought, there's no way I could go 21 days. I was 21 at the time, years old.
Right.
And so I thought, maybe I'll join you for 5 days. If you guys are still going by then, I'll send you guys on your way, But somehow, beyond my comprehension, the 3 of us didn't eat any food day and night, 24 hours a day for 21 days. One of the guys started getting the Peanut Power Plus smoothies, and I thought, that was cheating.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, it's still liquid.
But yeah, we just drank, me and the other guy, we drank tea and juices. We did, consume liquids, and we're able to get some calories and vitamins. But yeah, just only liquids for 21 days. One of the biggest things that intrigued me about that sermon, I was 21 years old, had no idea what I was going to do with my life, had gotten a general studies degree from a community college, and took a 1.5 year off break. I was right at the beginning of this 1.5 years because I thought, well, I don't really just want to pick some random thing to get a bachelor's degree in and hope that I use it once I figure out what I'm going to do. So I took a 1.5 year break from college. I was right at the beginning of this, and I thought, one of the things the pastor said was, one result, he covered 8 different kind of main topics. And one of them was a release of purpose, a release of vision, over your life, that God has created each one of us. He knows us better than we'll ever know ourselves.
Right.
And our life doesn't have to be this mysterious jigsaw puzzle. We got to try to put the pieces together. We can just go before him and say, God, what did you create me to do?
Right.
And he wants us to walk in the purpose he created us to do. He's not kind of withholding, let's see if you figure it out, And so, I just thought, man, if I could fast and it could result in God somehow communicating to me the purpose he created me for, that I think would be amazing.
Right.
And so that's what I entered into this fast, kind of seeking from the Lord. And so, just kind of skipping forward to the very end of the fast. It was actually the 18th day. I remember reading through the book of Luke, and it said, Jesus would often go to lonely places to pray in chapter 5. And then in chapter 6, it said the night before he chose his 12 disciples, he stayed up the whole night in prayer. And this was convicting to me, particularly because on the 21st night of my fast, I had the plan to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night so I could get up at 3 a.m. and start eating again because it would finally be over. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit kind of whispered and said, do you really want to do the easiest possible thing at the end of this time? You've committed to me, Is that what it's all about? Just to get out of the discomfort as fast as possible to say, I made it 21 days, What if instead you just stayed up the whole night in prayer to me?
Right.
So I went down to my basement at 11:30 at night, stayed there till 6 a.m. And again, there is a documentary on YouTube, Amazon, just called Win the Saints, if you wanted to kind of see the hour-long story that goes more into detail, that tells the story of how the ministry got started. But I just came out of the basement pretty confident that God had somehow, in his still small voice said, David, I've created you for 2 things: to help girls out of abusive situations and to disciple men in sexual integrity.
Wow.
So it was still, 1.5 years before I was just praying over direction.
Right.
Where in the world would this be? What exactly are the details of what this looked like? But I definitely felt like I got the overall big picture that night.
Oh, my
goodness.
Everything
that I'm doing with my life right now is a fulfillment as a result of one night in January of 2009, where I believe God whispered.
That is awesome. I remember your story because you've been on the podcast before a few years ago, and I remember the story of the fasting, but I did not remember that you had a heart, that God kind of laid that to you on the men's side of it. I didn't know if that was something that kind of came as a byproduct of, just taking care of the girls. So that's awesome that you heard him tell you both of those things. And then, God just opened up the door as you started evangelizing for the girls and then obviously for the men a few years later.
Yeah, one thing about that was kind of difficult for me is just growing up. My relationship with my dad got much better later in life, but it was real tough and real strained growing up. And I don't know if it was just my relationship with my parents that caused me to kind of internalize and affected the way that I lived my life only, or if there were other factors at play. But just all through middle school, all through high school, I just found 95% of all my friends were all girls. Right. And I rarely hung out with guys. And I felt like I was a burden to guys. I felt like, why would they want to spend time with me? But yeah, my mom is just the sweetest lady. You know, I just felt, again, I don't know if I internalized that and just thought, well, girls, yeah, they just, you know, my mom just loves me so much. She's so interested in me. I just kind of gravitated toward that. And so I was still kind of dealing with some of this, you know, even into college, into, you know, 2021. And yeah, when God spoke that at that time, it was very hard for me to comprehend. Like, what would this look like? And yeah, it really took, you know, 7 years before I got to the place where the Lord just kind of was saying, yeah, this is, hey, I spoke this to you. It didn't make sense to you. It's like, yeah, we'll focus on the safe home and evangelism and we'll figure that out later. But yeah, it took a number of years before the Lord just kind of continued bringing us back to, hey, this is also an element of what I've called you to.
It almost sounds like you were not the kind of guy that objectified women, or, we're not like the manly man trying to, sleep with all the women in your life or at school or whatever. And so God utilized that heart that you had for the women that you hung out with. Like, because mine is almost the exact opposite. It's like I objectified women, in high school and in college until I met my wife. And I didn't understand, the beauty of God's daughters, not until I had my own. Then it was like, and until I obviously gave my life to the Lord after my daughter was born. But I think that what a sweet heart that God knew that you had to be able to see, those who are brokenhearted that needed the protection of what you could give them in and through this ministry. And that's just total assumption, but man, that just to me spoke to me when you said that, because you did have that. Now, on the flip side, is God's going to allow you to be able to teach that to other men, because that is a struggle for men. The objectifying of women, the sexual, perversion that men, start off with an early age of having, whether it's through pornography or early sexual experiences or anything like that. And so now you've got an opportunity to come to these guys and show them what purity is. Show them that this is God's daughter that you're objectifying and that you're placing on a pedestal of lust and sexual deviance. And man, I don't even know if that just kind of spoke to me when you said that. Like, gosh, that just, what a sweet heart that God obviously saw that you had, that would be able to take care of both of those issues. Because like we were talking right before the podcast, having the ability to protect them, but then also seeing the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is the lust of men, the sin of man. You get those guys to stop. You don't have sex trafficking anymore. So, man, I love the way that you heard from God on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, just going back to what you were saying, one big part of the message, I think, of the ministry that has been intriguing, that has just kind of reared its head in some ways unexpectedly, is, part of my story. The first, woman I ever slept with was my wife on our wedding night.
Praise God, man. That's awesome.
But I will say, all through middle school, all through high school, I think it's possible to, not in a physical sense, objectify someone, but more on an emotional level.
Right.
Maybe partially with my relationship with my parents or whatever it might have been. I just was kind of insecure and wanted to try to find my validation in what girls thought of me. And that was maybe part of the reason why I was so drawn to them. It made me feel important and valuable, if I could get as many girls as possible, not to sleep with, but to laugh at my jokes and just want to be around me. And I think that is a level of, again, lust is seen as and defined as a physical, type of sin. But I think there is a type of exploitation where, if we're constantly trying to use someone to take from them and get, a sense of your own identity, even ironically, your own masculinity. You
Right,
know?
yeah.
We're looking to a woman to give us
Right.
our sense of masculinity. Is kind of silly. You know, it's like we are meant to find our identity and value and masculinity in one being, and that is God alone.
That is so good.
And when we try to get that from any other place, it's taking from someone.
Right.
It's exploiting them. It's on an emotional level, it's exploitation. And I believe that contributes to, you know, the overall culture of exploitation physically, globally. I think that honestly, with my interactions, with your interactions with members of the opposite sex, women, girls, on a daily basis, we can either work towards a culture of freedom, a
Right.
culture of dignity toward women,
Right.
and we can participate in an ending of something like human
Amen.
trafficking and
Right,
sex slavery
exactly.
halfway around the world.
Right.
You know, or we can contribute to a culture of exploitation.
Right.
You know, just by, whether we are, finding our identity in him and adding value to someone else,
Right.
or exploiting from someone and taking from someone on a heart, emotional level.
That's good. Holy cow, dude. That's good. That's really good. Because, lust isn't a physical issue. It's a heart issue. You know, it could be a material lust. It could be a sexual lust. It could be, you know, the idea, you know, Jesus, every time that he was talking with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, you know, he was always going to their heart. Like, you know, your heart is wicked. Like, you have all these religious, you know, works, but where's your heart? Like you're missing the whole point, whether it's, you know, murder or hate or lust and adultery or, you know, whatever that is, you know, God is always going to the heart. And so I think that's where, you know, as Christians, that we really need to always be doing that self-reflection. Like, where is my heart? What is causing me to stumble? You know, whether it's lust or envy or judgment or, you know, unforgiveness or any of those things. Where can we get to a place to where we can, like you said, allow that relationship with God to come in and push me out to the rest of the world in a loving manner that is helpful and not hurtful.
Amen.
So that's good. That's good. Dang, dude. So with the tell us a little bit about the orphanage. Tell us a little bit about the recovery that you're doing there. Like, how many girls do you currently have right now? And then kind of walk us through the process of, you know, one, how you're finding the girls, how you're restoring the girls, and kind of that process as well.
Yeah, even, you know, still to this day, we run the first and only long-term trauma counseling safe home. There's a few that, you know, a handful that are more short-term, maybe even just 1 or 2 nights, or at the most a week or two, where someone who's been abused can go. It's more of a transit facility to get them to a home. And we house 98 girls. We have a maximum capacity of 98 girls. We just opened in February our 6th and final dorm for this first safe home, which is just a maternity dorm. We have 5 that house 18 girls each. And then the 6th and final dorm on this campus is a maternity dorm. It'll house 8 girls. There's 6 right now that are pregnant because of abuse. You know, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
It's wild. All the girls that come to us, 99% get referred to us from what's called the victim support unit of the police.
Okay.
And we were encouraged. I visited 3 different safe homes in 3 different countries before opening the one in Malawi, and learned so much. And one of the things that they encouraged us to not do is just kind of go into villages and say, if you've been abused, or if your daughter's been abused, come to us. Because it's rare, but it can happen to where, a family might think, man, my daughter can go live in this facility, get free meals, go to school. It's like, let's tell them that you were abused, and so, one of the safe homes just said that they had tough, experiences, where they would find out sometimes months, later, like, oh, this was a made up story, And so, it's just helped for us to partner with the police, have cases of abuse be reported to them. And then, in this victim support unit, would just send the girls home without giving, having anything to offer them. And that's how, in a country of over 20 million people in Malawi, the vast majority of all cases of abuse, that when the girls, are abused and it's reported to the police, they're just told, hey, we'll do everything we can to gather this evidence, arrest the perpetrator. But for you, we have nothing to offer you.
Good luck, right?
And so, for the police to be able to say, hey, we know of this place with the saints, and they can come, we'll send you home to your village. They'll come and do a new case assessment, and if they accept you, then you'll be able to live in this facility for a year.
Right. So no matter what age, it's a year-long program. Is that correct?
Yeah. 95% will stay a year. Sometimes a girl may be able to graduate a little early. Sometimes they'll stay longer, depending on a few different factors that we call the milestones, kind of to healing.
Right.
Yeah, we just are aware of these different milestones we look for in a girl's life. But most of them stay for a year. What if
they're homeless or abandoned or orphaned? What do you do then?
Yeah, I thought that would honestly be more common than it is. We've had, I think, probably 5 or 6 children that, we could not identify, a home for them. The vast majority of the time, even if they don't have parents, if they're orphaned, almost always you can find a grandmother, an aunt, someone that can watch them. But when it comes to this type of case, we'll partner with what's called the Ministry of Social Welfare.
Okay.
Malawi was colonized by the British, and so their branches of government are called ministries.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Ministry of Justice.
Defense. Exactly. I get it.
Yeah, and so there's been a few times where we've had children be going and essentially entering into a foster program with the Malawian government.
Okay.
We've had, there's 2, there might be a third. 2 of our staff members off the top of my head have actually adopted girls that have gone through our program.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask, if that was kind of like, to me, all 4 of my kids are adopted, and I would take another 10 or 15 if my wife would let me, and if God just kind of opened up that door. So I couldn't imagine working there and not having 20 kids. All right, come on, you're with me, come on. So I would just, that would be so hard for me. But it sounds like that God has just kind of placed girls that, tend to have parents that now you're giving them healed and restored and a newness of life. So what is that process? Do you guys do an assessment on the type of abuse that has happened? And then do you have some sort of, you're calling them milestones. Do you have kind of like, the pathway to each milestone? Like, is there something like that goes on in that? How does that work?
Yeah, we definitely do new case assessments. And thankfully, with the 6th dorm opening, we've been able to kind of meet, in a sense, the demand of the number of girls that are being abused in our area. Our catchment area is what we call it, is about a 45-minute drive in any direction. And there are actually 8 victim support units within kind of this radius that we partner with that refer cases to us. Sometimes there's been situations where all the girls that come into our safe home are between the ages of 3 and 15.
Okay.
And so I remember actually, I don't go on a whole lot. We have a team of 11 trauma counselors that do the new case assessments. But one of them I went on, and the girl was 2, and we decided not to bring her into the safe home because she was just so young, and it was going to be hard for her to be away from her parents at the age of 2.
Right.
And there is something about that type of abuse that is not quite internalized the same way, in a sexual nature until the age of 3. It has a different impact. And so, we ended up just kind of checking in on her from time to time and allowing her to stay at home and, making sure that we can kind of divert some of the trauma being internalized and processed in a way that would take her to some negative things. But one of the things that we do when a new girl comes into the safe home, we have kind of this intake form, with 18 questions, and 2 of them, we try to assess, kind of where she is in a couple different areas. One of the milestones to healing, to freedom, has to do with their view of their abuser. And so we'll ask them, if you saw your abuser in the village, what would you do, and we'll ask them, have you ever prayed for your abuser, And so, most of the time it's like I would run away or I would kick them or, it's like, maybe I've prayed for them, but my prayers were, can they rot in hell forever?
Right, yeah, exactly.
And again, understandably, there's just a lot of hatred, a lot of bitterness.
Right.
And so After a year, our hope is not that they'll return to the village if the man has been arrested. It happens in the 40s. We did 2 different studies. One year, it was 43% of the men, of the girls that abused the girls in our safe home had been arrested and given a jail sentence. Another year, we did a lot of work with the police, with the courts, and it raised up to 47%. We've never been able to pass 50%. But 50% of the time, or less than 50% of the time, the man is actually arrested and sent to jail. We do, encourage. We do believe God established the institution of the government, and we don't try to avoid, jail sentences of men as we're doing men's ministry. We definitely work with and complement that type of work. But
there is forgiveness of sin, but there's also consequences of sin. You can choose not to sin, but you can't choose the consequences. That's what I always tell church folks. You have the choice not to sin. God has given you a way out somehow, but you have no choice of the consequence, no matter what that is. So that's good.
So we've just seen that if a girl is graduating with a lot of that same hatred and bitterness in her heart and unforgiveness in her heart, it's not so much hurting the man; it will hurt her.
Right,
It'll prevent her from stepping into the incredible bright future that God has for her.
Amen.
And so, just in obedience to the teachings of the Bible, we want to help them get to a place, again, not where they're going to return home if the perpetrator is there and try to be friends with them.
Exactly.
Of course, there's definitely healthy boundaries that you don't cross. But just to where in their heart, they can honestly just say a prayer and say, God, this man, he doesn't know it, but he's your child.
Amen.
You love him, and he's in the hands of Satan, and he's giving in. He's trying to fill this emptiness and void that only you can fill, with the abuse of young girls like me. And I just pray that he would give freedom, that he would walk in sexual integrity, that he would honor you with his life, and that you would save him, that he would give his life to
Praise
you.
God.
So that they can just release a lot of that toxic bitterness and unforgiveness in their heart. So that they can walk in true freedom. So that's one of the examples of like a milestone in the counseling sessions. We're trying to assess and bring them to a place where they can be free from that toxic hatred in their heart.
Amen, brother. Golly. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. Like, I know it's by the grace of God. I know it's by the power of the Holy Spirit, but just the emotional side of that. Like, I know your heart. I've met you, and I've seen your heart the first time, and I see it even more this time, that, you have a heart for them to be restored, but you even have a heart for the person who is the offender to know Jesus. And man, if our cultural Christianity could understand that, like that's the ultimate freedom, even for us. Like when we relieve that hatred or that anger or that, want them to go to hell kind of mentality, there is freedom in that. And man, we don't teach that enough in the United States. I know you've got a busy day today, and I just want to give you an opportunity. Like, how can people support you? How can people come along? Like, what is the process for people to help you? Do you need financial help right now? I know it's not easy. It's not cheap. Even in Africa, it's still expensive. But what can we do? What can our audience do to come alongside it? I mean, honestly, folks, I've seen his stuff. I've seen, I follow him and the pages that he has and all the stuff that they're doing in Africa. Like, it is something that is needed, not only there, but also here in the United States. And we need more men and women called to listen to, the voice of God. And so for those who are doing it, let's support them. Like, how can we come alongside of you and help you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, if you have any further questions, you can watch the documentary. That's one of the best ways to kind of get some of the gaps filled in, even just from this episode. And yeah, we have a website, winthesaints.com, WHEN, Win the Saints, like Win the Saints.
Right, right, exactly.
And you can send an email there. Again, if you want to connect, if you have any questions, of course, you can, financially sign up.
Right.
To be a reoccurring monthly donor, give a one-time donation. Right now, we run a school that's connected to the Safe Home, and we're a little over halfway to our goal of building a boarding hostel for $50,000 that'll house 60 girls. So after a girl goes through our year-long program, instead of returning home, the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable will be able to live in this boarding hostel and continue going to our school. And so that's what we're working toward now. We have a family that is moving to Malawi from Winfield, Missouri, actually, in May of 2027.
Wow,
and they're going to be coming under Win the Saints, launching the second long-term trauma counseling safe home about 3 hours from where this first one is.
Wow.
And so, we're looking, to add, around $3,000 in monthly support. And so, if anyone would want to partner with us to help us move toward launching this second safe home, that would be incredible.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And what do you suspect that's going to be cost-wise?
Monthly or in terms of one time or both?
Yeah, like if you're launching a whole new one, what does it take to do that? Like maybe somebody out there has a check that they just want to write. Like, give them a number,
Yeah, in November, we're going to be purchasing land. We're actually going to, because it can, ours took almost 3 years to slowly fundraise, build. We built our first main administrative building for $80,000. Mm-hmm. So once we purchase land, we're thinking we'll spend less than $5,000, $3,000 or $4,000, get some land, and then, start working toward fundraising to build a safe, at least the first building. So, you got $100,000.
So $100,000, guys. Y'all would take care of another trauma home in Malawi. So let's pray that happens.
In May we're going to start actually renting a building and be able to start partnering with the police in a city called Kota. And we don't want this family to move there and wait for construction for a year, 2, 3. So one other quick thing is if you're in this area, or even if you're not in the St. Louis, Eureka area, Missouri. If you want to introduce, me to your church or missions pastor or a friend or whatever it might be, a Bible study group in your home or a small group you're a part of, I would be honored to come and share as well about the ministry.
Okay. So praise God, brother. Well, man, I love having you on the podcast. I love watching your work. I told you earlier, it's envious to what you're doing. God has me stuck in a church, preaching, which I love and adore. I have the world's greatest church, but I also have this, this nudge to go overseas. I have this nudge to kind of, do that kind of stuff. But I will live vicariously through you right now, and hopefully get to come and visit someday. So absolutely, we'll start there. So.
Anytime.
Well, brother, again, thank you so much for the ministry that you have, the calling, the heart, man. I can't tell you how much I just see God all over you, like, in the heart that you have for these girls and for these men. Like, that's a beautiful thing. I pray we all have that. So, all right. Well, God bless you, brother, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
All right. God bless.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Man Up God's Way podcast. Visit us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and our website at manupgodsway.org.